that jersey. It's disgusting.
Eugenio!
Oh, let's go. Gino, baby.
Yeah, Gino's my favorite player on the Mariners for sure.
All right, what do you got on?
It's the sorry.
A little Griffey throwback piece.
Oh,
Oh,
nice.
love that. Love
That's
that.
fire as well. Hey, Brad, what do you got on?
I have the best player on the A's on the back of my jersey.
Oh, nice. Is he the player to be named later?
Yep.
That's fire.
Yep.
I think Eugenio Suarez is so swaggy because one, he wears anybody in the history of sports that wears a dangle earring is sick to me, or the dongle or whatever you call it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So like the Bonds earring that he had like the cross that dangled off his ear, but he is so sick that he has his own number, like diamond studded in an earring. Like it's the most swaggy thing I've ever seen. So
I was gonna get one of those with my initials, but it got a little spendy. Rent up here is high.
Yeah, I imagine so. Just like a nice little CJ piece.
Yeah. Tread, I'm surprised you don't have a Robbie Ray jersey on.
Oh God, dude.
It's not your speed.
I remember watching that in the office in Hero Swarty, and like the ball was hit, and it felt like every like ounce of oxygen just left the room.
We had the whole series going on the scoreboard in the outfield. And when that happened, I almost snapped my computer in half. But you deserved it, right? Like you saw him coming in, the great white horse that you're gonna die on top of. You saw him coming in, you're like, this doesn't end well whatsoever. Especially when the first hack the guy takes is just on time for a fastball, just clips it.
I was just like, what are they doing throwing fastball? He got away with one. Okay, there you go. You got your one fastball by him. Cool. Now you can just spin it. Nope. Let's get right back in there, baby.
Terrible.
Let's go left on left matchup so he can throw all just like forcing heaters into the barrel. That's a good call. That's just incredible. I don't really want to go crazy on that.
Good because I'm having an absolute allergic reaction to the coffee.
God, are you just melting
I'm just
right now?
Just like, yeah, this is brutal.
Kraut goes, I want to drink a coffee real fast to get excited, and then realized he was allergic to coffee and is now just melting facially.
Allergic to coffee?
Rag, though.
Dude, he's wiping his face with a rag.
I don't even know what's going on.
That's awesome.
All right. Just did the hot ones challenge.
This would be fun though if we just did we were eating something as well. Like if we did this with Phil's, we could just send Phil's to CJ and he could just crush a sub right now.
Oh yeah. That would definitely be
our
fun.
Our strength coach talked it up. I want to try it.
It's fantastic. I mean, next time Stanford's here for a 3-game set against Pacific, we can head down to Phil's and Black Dog for that matter. And I'll introduce you to Hank Patterson Real Estate. So
let's make that happen.
That'll be huge. We are here with CJ Baker, Video Technology and Analytics Coordinator at Stanford University. CJ, welcome to the pod.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. I'm excited about it.
Well, we'd like to kind of just dive into it here. You've obviously made quite a few stops in your career. But if you guys want to go to CJ's bio page, you can kind of look that up. We kind of want to get into the meat and potatoes here. All right. So I want to throw it to Ryan Kraut, who's very excited to ask you the first question here tonight. Ryan, take it away.
Thank you, Kyle. So the question I have is kind of just bouncing off of analytics and kind of where the game is headed. Seems like coaches more and more have to, they understand what they're using in order to kind of translate that to the players. My question for you is, do you ever worry that you don't want to dome up a player, or in a sense, or cloud them when they're trying to train or compete with metrics or analytics, and so there's kind of a delicate balance in a way that you have to translate that to them in a way that won't confuse them while they're trying to obviously go out and do something that's very difficult?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it really varies player to player. We have some guys that are so cerebral that it's almost it works against them, but we also have guys that can really handle the information, and that's where kind of the relationship building piece comes in huge for us. And that was a huge emphasis when I took this job, was that the player relationship part is really important to the staff here, because you have to get to know the the different nuances about each guy's personality, you know, how they think about their swing, how they talk about it. And as far as development goes, yeah, you know, we have some of the smartest kids in the country here. And I feel like oftentimes because they're so smart, they're used to being able to just solve problems, right? Like the equation's in front of them. There's always going to be an answer to that equation, and they're always going to be able to get there. And with hitting or baseball in general, that's not always the case, right? Like we've all seen it where it takes a month of movement repetitions or movement prep or different things in order to work out something that has been ingrained in a hitter for so long. And so I think as far as figuring out how we get that information to them so that they're not thinking too much about it, it really just varies player to player for us. And a big thing that I've talked about in the past is that I think that it's sort of like pilots flying planes these days, right? It's all computerized and everything is very automatic. And I remember one of my athletes a couple of years ago talking about how there was a fear that maybe pilots would lose the feel of what to do if an emergency happened, and they didn't have that because they've been relying so long on the computers and everything. And we talked to our guys about the same thing, like, hey, we could give you the data and we can give you all these feels and different things, but at the end of the day, you still need to be able to land the plane, and, you know, in a situation like competing where you don't have any of that to right in front of you to help make swing adjustments. So we have to be good enough to pilot our own plane once we get into competition. So it's definitely a healthy balance.
That's awesome. That's absolutely awesome. Kind of going off that, do you see any patterns in terms of, you know, adjustments that you might, you know, suggest to a player in terms of, are we mostly sticking with, you see something analytical and then you prescribe an external cue, a goal, rather than trying to prescribe a feel? Or is that also player to player in terms of what, you know, they're most comfortable with? Do they want to go solve that problem, like you said, or they kind of want to think internally about how their body's moving while trying to, you know, solve the problem?
Yeah. So when we look at kind of how the process works with helping our players out, we could give them different things, but at the end of the day, what our hitting coach's goal, what my goal, what our strength coach's goal, and when we all come together, you know, and work together when it comes to specific athletes, is to make it so that the athlete is able to almost self-diagnose, because at some point we're not going to be able to get there, right? So I think there, again, it's a balance of you know, we're getting out of the ground early with our backside, and that's directly, you know, correlated to you losing bat speed once you get to land and start swinging, right? So here's a feel for you. Here is the data that backs this up, and now you also need to know what it feels like when it's wrong, because at some point, whether it's, you know, hopefully they're playing professional baseball or they're playing summer ball and they can't easily contact us in the middle of the summer, hopefully they're able to have that conversation with themselves of, okay, this was what happened, this was the result, and okay, I'm able to walk back from there and answer the questions of, okay, why did this happen, what would cause that, and then kind of break it down on their own.
Awesome. I can keep going, Tread and Brad, if you guys are
well,
cool with that.
I mean, I've got a tough question for him, and I don't mean to put him on the spot here, but I absolutely do mean to put him on the spot here. CJ, after complaining for months, not getting a wedding invite, what happened on September 3rd, 2022, on the day of my wedding, when I received an RSVP for you and a +1, and you decided to not be in attendance to the event? Let's clear the record.
You won't find any news articles about it, but there was a burning schoolhouse, and it was right on my way up north in a small remote town in Northern California, and I had to pull off to the side of the highway. I don't know that there's necessarily a group of firemen. In fact, the firemen were in the building giving a presentation at the time, so I was the one that had to go in, and help out. Actually, what happened was, my parents, my dad's birthday is right around that time, and my parents are very you know, they're older and they're very COVID conscious and stuff. And when it came down to it, I brought up going to a wedding, and my mom was pretty you know, anti that. So that was
well, now I feel kind of bad.
No, don't feel bad. That's also on me for the lack of communication.
No, it's okay. I just wanted to clear the air. wanted to
Yeah.
to solve the case, and now I feel a lot better for that burning building that was saved by you.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
that's huge.
Yeah, is the
And that
building
town still
is
has
the
a fire
building
department.
okay? Okay.
Yeah.
Building's okay. I actually stayed an extra couple hours and helped lay the brick down
Of
to
course.
rebuild. So
Of course.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
That's really good.
That's huge. That's huge.
That's awesome.
All right.
yeah.
In all
People helping
seriousness,
people.
in all seriousness, I do have an actual baseball question for you.
Okay.
For those of you who don't know, CJ is primarily more of like a hitting background. In this job that he's currently in with Stanford, he does a lot more with pitches as well. And so I would say my question, I guess, is what has been the thing that you've learned the most about pitching through this experience? And like, what is one word of advice for maybe a coach who maybe doesn't have a background in like a certain position group, but is looking to transition and be more involved with a different group? What's some advice you could give them?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing, and this is going to sound like an awful like cop out answer, but the biggest thing I've learned about pitching is all of it. I really was starting from ground zero when it came to pitching. Even as a recruiting coordinator at a D2 and my time at Bucknell, I have been like, yeah, the arm looks good, cool, let's sign him. And then he's passed off to the pitching coach, and then I'll complain about him throwing balls on game 1 and 2 of the series,
As any non-pitching coach does.
Yes. Yeah. And so I think one of the biggest things that I have a really big appreciation for now is the importance of quality of catch play, and really getting guys to understand feel, right? And I think we have the benefit of using Edgertronic camera and different tools to help pitchers kind of understand feel versus real, right? So if a guy's having a working bullpen and is trying to create, more horizontal on a slider, right? And we have a lefty who's really true sidearm and he wants a big sweep on a slider instead of a bullet. He can really talk about, okay, I feel like it's coming off of my index finger here. I want a little bit more pressure and I want my fingers to get a little bit more out this way, right? And then we could show him that on the camera, and we could say, okay, yeah, exactly what you're feeling, or hey, that's not exactly it. What you're actually getting is a little bit more middle finger dominant, or your ring fingers on the ball a little bit too much, and we really need you to kind of focus a little bit more how you want to feel. And so I'd say the importance of feeling spin and the importance of that in catch play is I mean, it's really paramount to success and development for pitchers. And then as far as like part B of that question goes, I think if you're going to really dive into a different position group, or you're starting out and you're trying to figure out what you're going to do, I think there's so many great resources, right? There's so many great resources online. The one thing I started with was, okay, I knew we were going to get TrackMan in the middle of last year. So TrackMan's got this big glossary of what every single stat on their Excel spreadsheet means when you get the data at the end of the game. Excel spreadsheet, but
no, it's okay.
Yeah, sorry, but basically I went in and I wanted to figure out what each thing means, right? And there was a lot of things in there that I didn't really understand, and I was fortunate enough with one of our scientists at the school, Bryson Nakamura, who was with the big league club with the Brewers, who Tread, you've had experience interacting with. He's awesome. Bryson, a D3 Pacific Northwest guy,
he was a logger.
He was a logger. He's got that best of both worlds, where he played some college baseball, but he's also a brilliant baseball mind. So he was able to meet me kind of halfway with lingo and explaining things on a more dumbed down version so that I could understand it. And then if I can understand it, our pitchers and players can also understand it. But yeah, I think if you're gonna go into it, just I mean, start understanding as much as you can. And I think that's the biggest piece, is just really dive in. And that's the scary part, right? Because you look at it, if you look at stuff like data as a whole, it's really intimidating, and it's kind of tough to want to go in there and start figuring out what's important to you and what you can really understand. But when you do just dive in, it's cool. I'm still learning new stuff, weekly as we go through all this.
Awesome. Well, I kind of want to get to know you a little bit more, CJ, and your role entirely because it's such an interesting role. And I just kind of want you to walk us through what does the video technology and analytics coordinator, what's a day in the life at Stanford in like in the beginning of the spring, maybe middle of the season, and when you're getting ready to kind of go to the postseason? What does a day in a life for you look like?
Yeah, I mean, early spring, we're in the office a lot. I think that one of the biggest things that Coach Esker talks about is he's lost in a lot of ways, but being underprepared is not one of them. So we have a real collaborative setting in the office where it's kind of a round table type deal with King Arthur at the head in Coach Esker. But so we get in pretty early. We'll typically get a lift in as a staff, and then preseason, I'm going through every roster of every opponent we're going to play at home, putting them into a spreadsheet, and then uploading it into our video collection database that I will then tag during games. Right, so I tag each individual play as it happens. And then we're kind of prepping way ahead of time for opponents. Like we, as of right now, hand draw our spray charts and watch 40 swings of a hitter against righties and then 40 swings of that same hitter against lefties. And then we create this kind of story of what they do. And you've got different colored lines for 2K, anything in between, and first pitch, right? And then we write the count, the pitch, the location, and it kind of helps our pitching coach then cross-reference throughout games of, okay, here's what he typically does, and in certain counts. But yeah, so it's a lot of preparation early on, and then middle of the season, it's a lot more kind of trying to track trends, right? Last year we kind of looked at the direction we were going, and our chase out of zone rate was a lot higher than we wanted it to be. So on the hitting side, we decided that we were going to prioritize swing decisions, and we started it up in a series against University of Washington where I started throwing BP in the cage, and I asked the guys, you want to go fastball or breaking ball? And if they chose fastball, they have to cut out a section of the plate that they're looking for. And I'll just mix the fastball around. And all we're doing is good decision, bad decision, whether they foul a ball off, whether they hit a rope back up the middle or anything else. It's just, that was a yes or a no. And we're taking really results out of it and trying to train their aggressiveness to certain zones, right? And so through the trend tracking through the season, we kind of realized that. And then once we made this this concentrated effort to make swing decisions a priority, we saw our chase out of zone rate go down. We saw better decisions made early in counts for hitters, especially in plus counts. And I mean, we were bottom of the Pac-12 through the first part of the year in home runs, and ended up setting a record for Stanford and leading the Pac-12 in home runs. And then postseason is just it's an absolute horse race, right? Like you're just trying to predict and figure out who might be in a regional with you, and then prepare for the teams that are going to be there for you. And we were fortunate enough to host both the regionals and the supers, but it's again a lot of preparation, and we probably spend an hour per hitter if it's a guy that's got over 100 at bats, just breaking down their swing, trying to figure out how we're going to pitch to them, how we're going to position our defense.
Wow.
And watching any type of skill stuff that they might do, whether it's bunting, stealing. I mean, and in playoffs, right, everything in logic kind of goes out the window, and all things are possible. But and the crazy part about regionals is you prepare for a team that you might not even see, right? They could get knocked out before you ever play that team. But yeah, it's crazy. It's a lot of work. And then we were fortunate enough to go to Omaha last year, and that's a whole different type of preparation. And we didn't even make it into the winners bracket like we were hoping to, but you kind of are preparing for the other side of the bracket if you do make it, because you never want to get sped up. So yeah, it's a lot of preparation, and going over film with the guys and talking to hitters about what I'm seeing, what Coach Rodriguez is seeing, and Coach Mercurio, and just kind of collaboratively helping our players out.
Wow. That is awesome. I kind of want to just touch on if Kraut has any questions on this too, but just the difference in levels that you've been in. as a coach in baseball, like working your way up? Are there any, I mean, obviously there's going to be some big differences in training and the equipment available to you at Stanford University, but working your way up through your coaching career, what are some of the biggest changes you've seen as you've jumped up the ladder in divisions or size of school or conferences or whatever it may be?
Yeah, you know, the thought I had was once you get up to this level, it was going to be a little bit more of like get into the office at 12, you know, cup of coffee, and the guys are going to take BP and take ground balls. And what you see is this relationship with baseball that's different than anywhere else I've been, right? These kids are obsessed with it. Some of them have been famous in baseball since they were 12 or 13 years old, right? We have Drew Bowser, who was getting offers as an 8th grader and has been a high profile player. But you know, the grind that they go through is very similar to the guys at Division II when I was there, because I mean, those kids are all guys that think that they should be at Stanford, you know, like they think, whether we had a San Jose State transfer who felt like he got snubbed and should still be there, or we had a guy that nobody else was recruiting and we signed, they practice every day with that in the back of their mind of, hey, I feel like I deserve a little bit more, right? So I think the player mentality, the grind is still the same. The mentality is a little bit different, right? At Stanford, it's been awesome. We have more baseballs than we know what to do with, right? Like you have a full trash can of baseballs in every single cage, and then a green bin in every single cage, also full of baseballs, self-meeting machines.
Gosh.
And then on the field, you've got even more baseballs. And at Division II, when Coach Calhoun and I got there, we had 72 baseballs when we walked in the doors of the office, and we had to order 1,000 baseballs. You know, and I think one of the benefits that we do have here with our staff is we have a bunch of guys who have had to be creative throughout their careers. You know, Andre was at San Jose State, and it's not at the time wasn't a super high budget program. Coach Eager came from, you know, Cal Poly and then Cal, which Cal is, you know, again, not for being a Power 5 school, it's not the most like you know, well-funded program. And so him and Coach Eager, when they were there, had to be creative. And then we got here, and when you have all the resources and you have all these people that have had to be creative throughout their careers, I think it leads to some really cool things, right? But yeah, that was like a long walk for a short drink of water to say there's a lot of similarities in the players. And you know, just I think the biggest difference is what we have available to us. Like you tear a pair of batting gloves here, and you just go to our equipment manager, he gives you 2 more pair of batting gloves. And right. And at one point,
calm down, Brad, calm down.
And
at one point we were doing gear orders at a couple other schools that I was at, where players had to pay for, you know, their shirts and stuff, or we're begging Marucci to send us some stuff. And you know, so I've been on both sides of it, and I'm very grateful to be on this side.
That's awesome. That is very cool. That kind of leads me into one other question I have. Sorry, I know I'm taking up, but I you know, Ryan and I, Kraut and I are both we just got done playing, and now we're kind of starting our coaching career. And it's definitely interesting jumping to the other side. It's actually a crazy lens that you kind of have to look through. And just thinking about all these different things in the game that you'd never really thought of before at that kind of level, watching it for yourself. And all these expectations you kind of have for yourself that you had as a player kind of aren't the same as a coach. So my question to you is, when you kind of began your coaching career, what was kind of your ceiling of expectations that you had in your mind? Like what role could I be one day, and why would I want to be that role? And then you ended up here at Stanford doing this unbelievable job. And did you kind of ever see yourself getting there, or was it never really a thought in your mind when you kind of began coaching?
Yeah, so I got, when I left grad school at arguably the best school in the Pac-12 at University of Washington.
Unbelievable chatter.
Sorry about that last weekend too, Trent. I saw that.
I was gonna wear Oregon stuff if they won, and yikes.
I was gonna have the box score as like my background, but I couldn't get it done in time.
Awesome.
Dang it.
but yeah, I mean, as far as what I had envisioned when I left grad school, I had one of my mentors, Elliot Cribby, who's at University of Pacific now. Yeah, he told me, he's like, hey, you know, think about where you want to be. And I was like, well, I want to be a Division I coach. He goes, okay, so even simpler than that, you want to be in the NCAA? And I said, yes. And he's like, so wherever you want to be, get there as fast as you can, and get there. Like, I mean, any way you can. And, you know, Greg Getz, who was assistant coach at Seattle U and was a director of ops there for a while, said the same thing to me, because he was like, you know, I took a pitching staff at an NAI across the country from a 9 ERA to, you know, sub 4 to sub 3, and I still was never getting the opportunities that I thought I deserved. And so I took a director of ops job at Seattle U in order to get a foot in the door here, right? So I kind of saw that play out firsthand of people that I really respected. And so when I was looking at jobs and stuff, I kind of looked at the, you know, ABCA postings, and then there was one that came up on Twitter that Lock Haven, this D2 in Pennsylvania, needed an assistant coach, hitting background, and I think my parents were kind of inspirations on that part, because they've traveled the world for their careers. They've done, you know, so many great things. And so I was like, you know, I've never even left the West Coast, really. So what better way to start off my career than going where I know absolutely nobody, in the smallest town in Pennsylvania in the middle of the Poconos. And it was the best thing. It was the best thing I've ever done. I went out there. I was making, you know, $4,000 as a coach on the year, and was opening up a YMCA at 4:30 in the morning and getting all my recruiting emails done at that time. And then would go to the campus and be throwing BP until 10 o'clock at night, and then wake up and do it all again. And I was completely happy. And it also allowed me to gain perspective, just kind of how different people live, and, you know, why East Coast people think the way they do. And I think without taking that risk or taking that jump, I don't end up here or, you know, anywhere. But and then so from there, I was able to get to Bucknell, which satisfied my Division I goals. And I got there, and we you know, we play University of Arkansas my first year, and I've got all these crazy thoughts of, yeah, we've prepped the guys, this is great. I don't really know what it looks like at that level. And then you realize that, you know, that to some degree there's Division I, and then there's a second tier of Division I. And we found that out when, you know, we lost 32-4 on Friday, you know. But it was a great time, and it was awesome. And the development piece at that level is so huge, right? Like those kids want to be taught, and they want to be coached, and they're starved for it. And you know, there's a lot to be said about what those coaches at the mid-major level do, what we did at Division II, Division III, JUCO. You know, at all the lower levels, you got to work hard, right? Like your players, you're oftentimes getting guys that are 3-tool guys, 1-tool guy, you know, and you got to be able to grind it out with them, and then hopefully develop enough to where you have competitive players on the field. Where here it feels a lot more like, hey, just don't mess that guy up, you know. Like we're ensuring that nothing goes terribly wrong before they get to their draft year. And you know, it's a little bit different, and there still is development, but it's not as much. But yeah, I just like get to where you want to be as fast as you can, and just hang on.
That is great.
Kraut, you look excited.
Yeah. I was just gonna
pop in
kind
there.
of hearing about kind of the Division I kind of idea of coaching and whatnot. I want to throw it back to 2017 with the Hornell Dodgers.
Yes.
And just kind of get into kind of like a summer ball conversation. Kind of seems like, you know, with certain summer ball teams, like it's almost like there's just a magic to them. And I just want to know, like, kind of managing that team. What was kind of like the mindset like going into that, and how it's different than maybe kind of like a school ball experience? You know, you got 18 to 22, 23-year-olds going to a town they've maybe never lived in before, host family. And is it kind of just all about the vibes, or like what's kind of the mindset going into to manage that team?
So I benefited from having a great staff around me. I hired a guy who's at West Virginia now as a pitching development guy. Who's a small D2 in West Virginia, and he's a great pitching guy, really driven. And then I hired our absolute spark plug that I had coached at Lock Haven that wanted to get into coaching. He was our center fielder, our emotional captain. He was it was perfect. And then our SID from Lock Haven needed an internship to finish grad school, so I brought him in as an SID, which no other team in the NYCBL had a sports information person. And to see where they're all at now, one's at West Virginia, the guy from Lock Haven, the player is at Virginia Tech now, and then our SID just actually took another job with the Olympic Training Center in Colorado. So that's kind of cool. Like, we're all doing our own thing, but
that's cool.
I just had the perfect blend of personalities. I had some D1 guys that kind of rode the bench and were eager to get innings. I had some Division III legends with Jack Brett and Connor Bailey, and
whoa.
Connor Bailey. Yeah, Connor
Jack
Bailey
Brett?
and Jack Brett. They were
shout out EDP as well.
They were co-MVPs of the league that year. Connor, the most unassuming power hitter I've ever met in my life.
Bro,
isn't that crazy?
I still don't know. I have no idea what I was doing against Connor Bailey. It was just a laser show every single time he played us.
Yeah, it was incredible. So our first practice that we have out there, I'm like, hey guys, it's summer ball. I'm going to be out here every day for extra work. If you guys want it, I'll coach you up as much as you want. We'll throw as much BP as you want, but I really don't expect you to be out here. And then they were out there every single day. And then I was like, hey, my only big things are I want us to hit home runs and doubles, and I want us to steal a lot of bases. And I made this joke. I was like, if we could get to 50 bases, that'd be awesome. Hell, 100. And I was like, you know what? Let's get to 200. Can I say on this?
No, it's okay.
Yeah,
I'm
you're
not
good.
gonna be
okay.
It's fine.
Right. Yeah. So I was like, you know what? Fuck it. Let's get to 200, which is like, an egregious number. And we end up stealing 200 bases. And from stolen base 1 in game 1 to stolen base 200, they would yell out "road to 200" every single stolen base.
Wow.
And the town loved the kids. And it was awesome. And I tried to never be really too serious. I told the team my goal was to get tossed once in the summer, just for fun, because you had to pay like a $10 fine and whatever. And so they were out there, every single night. They sometimes we would get back from a day game and they'd want to hit under the lights and just turn music on. And I was like,
Wow.
if they love it that much, I'm going to be out there as much as I can, and we won the championship. It was a blast. And I'm still in a Snapchat, group of my guys from that year. And it's just cool. I mean, a lot of them are doing awesome things now. And then I followed them through their college seasons and kept in touch. And yeah, it was awesome. If anybody gets a chance to coach collegiate summer league, I recommend it. That was my favorite time in my coaching career, probably.
Nice. That's awesome.
That was awesome.
I've got a question for you. So we recently have, by the grace of the Lord, acquired 2 80-hour analytics interns for the spring.
Holy smokes.
Yeah, pretty swaggy. We had 1 40-hour analytics intern this last fall, and honestly, it was literally just like, hey man, go clean up our Rapsodo data and show up at practice and hold the iPad type stuff.
Mm-hmm.
As someone who's in an actual well-ran analytics like situation, what kind of advice would you give to our program, but any program, especially like smaller schools looking to start like an analytics department? Like, what would you, if you had that experience, like, how would you break ground with that department?
Yeah, so I think one of the important things in knowing the coaching perspective, and then what I do here, I think helps me out a lot on this. But I think one of the most important things is to talk with the coaching staff and kind of figure out like, hey, whether it's on the pitching side, what do you value, right? Like our pitching coach has, real big value on intent and stuff. And we're like, okay, how do we maximize stuff? It's not as much pinpointing accuracy here and there. It's really wanting to maximize our stuff. And we're fortunate enough to have good enough athletes to where that that all plays out very well. And our hitting coach, it was, okay, what's important to you? And, he said, I really want to quantify what a barrel is for me, and look at line drive percentages and ground ball percentages and fly ball percentages, and then figure out what is the primary like training ground for each guy, right? Whether, we have a center fielder who right now in his current tool set shouldn't be hitting the ball in the air, because majority of the time he's an out, even though he can run the ball out. He's fast enough to, train at a low line drive and stay hard and low in the cages. And that's going to give him the best opportunity to get on base.
Right.
And
Hey,
I'm listening.
And so basically I would just say, talk with the coaching staff or in you all's position, figure out what questions you want answered or what's most important, and then be really good at collecting that information and figuring out, the answers. And I think one of the things I learned the most from Bryson was you can have too much data. And he said it, even at the big league level, when he got there, they wanted all these things. And Bryson found himself like over and over again asking, well, what are we trying to answer with that? And it turned out most of the time they were just like, well, I don't know. I don't know why I want that information. I kind of want it. And he's okay. And sometimes that happens here where Coach Rodriguez wants some information, and it's like, what are we trying to get from that? And he's like, I don't really know. I just want it. And so, okay, we'll get you the information. But I think really understanding the what are we trying to answer, and I mean, taking on projects that may turn out to be fruitless efforts, and really trying to go out on your own, I think is important too. Like I've tried multiple things, have failed at some stuff, and then we have some things that we really used last year to help us win some games. And I think having that ambition and just want to is really important as well.
Yeah, the thing I throw in there, just from experience for anybody listening, is be really mindful of time sensitivity, because like I've got a ton of stuff I'd love to measure, and I'd love to like have a full database and everything. But like me and Connor, shout out Connor Gates, our intern this fall, I wanted to build a run expectancy matrix for the NWC. And like, I was like, let's look at like 5 to 10 years of NWC data for like a run expectancy matrix. And we charted like 3 games over like 5 hours. And I was like, all right, dude, we're not going to be able to do this. So, yeah, I mean, I think like all that's really good. But the thing I wanted to add is like, be mindful of like what projects are actually manageable, because that's what we're running into right now. And we'll continue to wear our lumps there, but I'm just super stoked to have that capability. And I think it's actually like not that difficult to get involved with your professors and stuff at a small school and try to get them on board to help kind of the education part. Cause that's really how we've gotten the 2 guys that we've gotten, is just communicating with professors. It really helps being an alum for sure. But
Sure.
Yeah. Anyways, Brad, did you want to get in here?
Well, yeah, kind of jumping from the idea of it's so interesting that you have athletes who sometimes, right, that baseball is all about lift, hit as many doubles and home runs as you can, but sometimes it takes, you got to break down the athlete sometimes and figure out if that's actually best for them. So my question is, first, has there been anybody that's come through Stanford University that you've seen that has been like, man, nothing really kind of jumps like everybody else, but I don't think we can take him out, or he just can play. Is there anybody that's been like that? And if so, what was it kind of like experiencing that if it happened?
Yeah, I think our shortstop last year was like the prime example. Adam Crampton he was defensive player of the year in the Pac-12, and he did it playing the most boring brand of baseball you've ever seen, right? Like if the ball hits his glove, he's an out, right? If the ball touches his glove, you can pretty much turn around and start marking what the play was in the playbook. But on the hitting side, Adam was just as vanilla as it gets, right? Like I think he launched 1 home run at University of San Francisco, where the left field fence is 305 to left, and but he really leaned into his identity as a hitter, and he can control the barrel and he can stay into counts for a really long time. And I think that his understanding of the strike zone was incredible. And you know, Coach Esker's philosophy is if your shortstop is good enough, he can hit 100 and stay in the lineup every day, right? Like that was the thing. Adam could have hit 0.25 on the year and had an OBP of 200, and he would have stayed in there because he was so good defensively. But he really just had this understanding and care for his approach and strike zone and everything that allowed for him to be a good hitter. And you know, there's a lot of times where he would foul and get the mistake pitch, be beat on a fastball and hit it directly by the first baseman down the right field line, and he's on, right? And nothing about him when you watch a game is going to make you say like, wow, Adam Crampton was a superstar out there. But then when you look at the whole year, we really can't go to Omaha without him. We can't win the Pac-12 without him. We can't do a lot without that guy. And you know, we have superstars on the team with Brock Jones and Cody Huff and Alex Williams, and then you've got this guy who just plays the quietest version of baseball possible, and that probably was what made him one of the best players on the team last year.
Speaking my language, CJ. I love it. All hitting guys in here. The one infield guy loved hearing that. I love that. That's great.
Yeah, I will say Adam with the Orioles now is back hitting at our facility, and they're getting him to try and lift the ball some more. But you know, he's a year stronger in a different type of lifting program, and they're trying to get him to be a little bit more professional ready. But I do think that there is something to be said about what wins in college and what gets you noticed in college versus, you know, professional baseball, where it is a little bit different of a baseball game.
I do love that he picks like the guy who didn't really stand out on our roster too much as the guy who's in affiliated baseball at the Orioles, like a subtle drop there. Like, yeah, he's back working out with us, playing Orioles org, like, you know, whatever. But yeah, just kind of like a grinder. Guy doesn't stand out at all, really. I love it.
Yeah.
So my next question, moving in another direction, as we all know, the most influential thing added at Stanford over the last year was the panini maker put in the kitchen by Coach Esker. But besides that, what would you say is the item or piece of tech or whatever thing like that Stanford has added within the last year that has made the biggest impact in your opinion?
I think the easy answer is TrackMan, and I think just, you know, it's kind of standard across the board in our conference now to have it. But we got it middle of last year, and it's been a big difference maker for us. I think we throw, for right now, before we get the portable in, we throw a lot of bullpens early in the fall off the main mound, and we're kind of constantly gathering data and trying to figure out where guys might be a little bit deficient. And it really is the coolest tool that I've gotten to see, and just how quick and immediate it is. Right, when you pair that up against Rapsodo, you feel like you're using a stopwatch versus an hourglass, right? It's really, you know, not comparable. But other than that, my personal favorite one is the Edgertronic camera. I think we started using it for a lot of the stuff that we do, whether it was how taking videos of infielders and seeing how they're pulling balls out of their gloves, throwing mechanics for them, or whether it's the extended angle for hitters where we put it on top of the dugout during scrimmages and just mass collected swings, or it's pitch design, right? Like that's the big use that we've used it for, is pitch design and helping guys understand what they're doing. But I think that's my favorite. If I could go to somewhere else, that's one thing that I'm like, hey, we have to have that, because it's awesome for hitters, pitchers, fielders, whatever. It's a great tool.
That's awesome.
Yeah, you're lying. The reason why you have the edger is to put home runs on Twitter in slow motion.
I did send you a sword. I did send you a sword.
I mean, it just reeks that I'm a hitting guy. Like, it just like you're just putting it out there like, hey, everybody, I only love hitters. And so let me just show you another slow motion tank. Go trees.
That's what everybody wants on Twitter. Trey.
It's true. It's what gets the clicks, you know?
Yep.
That's facts though. That's
Yeah.
facts. Kraut, you want to fanboy about hitting real quick or what?
I mean, I do have a question about something that I heard earlier, kind of when you guys were on the phone, when we were at Phil's. But shout out Phil's, sponsor of the pod.
Shout out Phil's 1,500 subs.
Tread made a joke that that you're just gonna say swing less, and I was just kind of like curious, what kind of like the mentality is behind that? Does that kind of stem from guys trying to diagnose themselves and like being more cerebral when they're in the cage, as opposed to kind of just let's just hammer 150 swings and get out of here, just let the reps take care of it? So is that kind of a mentality or a motto that you live by?
So there's kind of a two-pronged thing to it. One is yeah, you've heard this term thrown out, and I forget what coach said it, but cardio swings, right? I think it might have been Toby DeMello I was listening to, hitting coach at Arizona. I was listening to him talk, and he talks about cardio swings and how hitters will get in there and just like work themselves. You could do anything long enough to be bad at it, right? And you can, it's like being a coach, you can do any drill long enough to get mad at your players, right? Like you do this thing and they're great for 10 minutes, and then you go 15 minutes and you're like, oh man, I can't stand the way they do. And you're like, you should just cut it off at 10 minutes, right? And the same thing goes for hitters. Is you can swing yourself right into needing big mechanical overhauls. And so we try and get guys to stay out of the cages sometimes. I think after a long practice, a couple guys will grab helmets and bats, and Steve will catch them and be like, where are you guys going? They're like, the cages. And he goes, dude, guys, relax. And then the other piece of it was, I jokingly told Tread over the summer, I was like, if you don't swing, you can't strike out. You basically just can't strike out swinging. Like you just, if you don't swing. And
that's facts.
My big thing though, I was talking to Drew Bowser, our third baseman, and that was written on one of his evals was, swing less. And we were kind of diving into what that really meant for him in game and stuff. And it came down to our decision making, right? Like just because it's going to cross 17 inches somewhere in between your strike zone, it doesn't mean it's a pitch that you should hit, right? Like it's not, especially in plus counts or counts where you feel like you should be able to do damage and produce. And if slugging is going to be one of the things that we care about, then why go after a fastball running in at your belt when you know for a fact that you can't get there, right? Just take the strike and live to fight another pitch, and just swing less and make the swings that you do take count, whether it's in game or in the cages or whatever it is.
Gotcha. Very cool. Kind of staying kind of along a similar vein in terms of like understanding who you are as a hitter, like we were talking about. Do you guys use the analytics to kind of craft specific game plans for certain hitters? I've always kind of been curious. Obviously here we have blast. That's like one of the biggest things we use for, I guess, what we consider analytics, but like the idea that maybe a guy with high bat speed, but low rotational acceleration takes a while for his swing to get going. Maybe he's a guy that we ask to hunt pitches more often, as opposed to a guy with a high rotational, but maybe not as much bat speed. He'll react. He can go up and, hunt strikes as opposed to hunting a specific pitch and cheating to things. Like, is that go into the mentality? Is it that individualized? Is there a team approach? Sorry, I know that's a lot of questions, but yeah.
Yeah. As far as prepping for a pitcher and using that stuff, it's a lot more team based, and there's kind of a general outline of what the guy does. High spin, can live at the top of the zone, or wildly effective, right? Guys who just miss all over and then will just go 95 down the middle. But I think where that stuff plays a lot more into our game is late game offensive matchups, knowing that one of our hitters might be able to handle that high spin fastball a little bit better than some of our other guys who might get beat on it. And we're going to take a chance on a matchup later in the game. I'd say for the most part, our lineup stays our lineup again for the most part. But when you're talking about pinch hitting opportunities, I think you got to take into account who matches up well against pitchers with a lot more sink, and I think we've kind of gotten off of the traditional left versus right matchup. It's kind of just best person available against that pitcher. And you look at any splits, and some of your lefties hit lefties better, significantly or whatever it is. So yeah, I think that stuff plays a lot more into our late game strategy than it does like early on. But we do send out a lot of video the day before. So you're going to see a starter. This is the guy you're going to see tomorrow. Here's his average kind of metrics on his fastball, breaking ball. Here's how it moves. And then here's video of, strikeouts to righties, strikeouts to lefties, what he likes to do. And there's always a lot of times going to be a pattern there, unless you're playing against Tread and he's just going to cement mix you to death. And,
Yep.
But yeah, and then obviously like with that, I like to clip together all the home runs that pitcher's given up in a 3-year span, and then send that to our guys too. But that started off almost as a joke, but then you start to see a pattern of what they're doing when they give up the most damage, and that actually helped our hitters out a lot too.
Oh, that's so interesting.
That's super interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. That's so cool.
Plus, it gets
Dude,
you
the
guys
light
pumped up
bulb.
to go hit bombs, right?
Light bulb just
Absolutely.
went on for both those guys. They're fired up right now.
Yeah, well, I mean, Crowd and I used to watch a lot of film when we would pre series, on a Friday we'd watch film, and
Shout out.
you never really like look into, oh, that's what he gives up every time he gives up a bomb. Oh, of course it's like a fastball meet, but if you're hunting fastball and you realize it counts when he's going to give it up, like that just makes sense. And it just, I don't know, like envisioning home runs also, I feel like is helpful for hitters. I don't know.
It just gives them that confidence. And I would typically never admit it, but the pitcher does have the advantage, right? Like I'm always going to tell every hitter, like, you have the advantage. You've got a metal pipe in your hand. Like you can do anything you want with that. But
yeah,
you try and give your hitters every advantage you can. At the end of the day, pitchers, the game's so hard now. It really is, across any level, right? Like we played Chapman when I was at Biola in a midweek, and it was a hard game of baseball. They beat us, and it was a really hard game of baseball. And so you got to give hitters anything, like any bones you can, to just get them to feel more confident and let them feel the most prepared possible going into a matchup against whoever it is, whether it's a Sunday guy that throws 80, 83 with a plus change, or the Friday night guy where they know they're already in for a battle. Just try and get them to think like, hey, I'm dangerous against this guy, even at 0 for 2 with 2 strikeouts. I'm going up there third at bat. Like, I got you. But yeah, the game's hard. You gotta let the guys, one, have a little fun, and two, just get them to feel confident.
I have one last question for CJ. So I want you to answer this question in 2 ways for me, if you can. The first one, I want to speak about the Stanford camp. That's kind of what I want to get at. Just in itself.
Stanford camp plug.
Just because I think, well, for me growing up in the Bay Area, that was always like the camp that everybody would do. And I grew up in playing for a small high school. So it was a big deal to try and go out and do the Stanford camp. And I kind of want you to talk about it for kids in high school who may listen to this. What does it mean to kind of get at a camp like that in front of that many coaches? Like, just speak on that point of it. And then also, what does it mean for Stanford? Like, what's some behind the scenes of that camp for Stanford? Like, are they looking at kids there? Or are they just providing, the baseball world a good by doing the camp? Like, what does it kind of look like from both ends?
Yeah, I mean, as a kid, as a prospective student athlete, I think you go to a camp like that where you have a entire range of schools, and we've talked about adding a couple more prominent ones just to enhance the experience. And that Coach Esker, the one of the best things about him is camps aren't what you would think they were for a Power 5 head coach. He genuinely wants every player that comes there to remember the experience. He wants every coach that works the camp to be well taken care of. Like he genuinely cares about every person that walks through those gates at Stanford. When I was working, a little segue, but when I was working for Biola, my mom had come down and visited, because originally we lived in the Bay Area in Half Moon Bay. And so she came down and visited, and she was in the cages, and a ball got through the cages and hit her. Oh. And Coach Esker, at one point just walked over and just checked on her and talked to her. I was like, man, that, he really didn't have to do, she was fine, but he really didn't have to do that. And he spent just 10 minutes hanging out with my mom and talking to her and stuff. And so as a high school prospective student athlete, I think you're going to camps like that, and you're getting in front of a whole range of coaches, and you're kind of figuring out, when you talk to these coaches, because they're super accessible, right? Like throughout the day,
Yep.
you're working with them in different stations or whatever, or you've got a
Yep.
team coach, they're super accessible, and you can figure out a couple things. Like one, is this what level am I meant to be at? Or two, is this person somebody that I feel like I could play for? And I'm going to email him afterwards because I got along with Coach Treadway really well, and he made me laugh, and I would love to play for that guy, right? Like, so I think that it's an invaluable experience. And the one thing I always urge kids to do more is talk to the coaches. And it doesn't always have to be hey coach, what did you see with my swing? It could just be like ask a question about the school, right? Not everybody knows where Willamette is, and most people that were from LA didn't know where Biola was when I was there,
Mhm.
And so
Yeah.
I loved having those conversations, and we signed a couple kids when I was at Biola out of there. And yeah, Stanford, we have Charlie Bates coming 25 shortstop who's really good, and he came to Stanford camp.
Awesome.
And then yeah, on the other side of it, like the coaching, the networking piece for coaches is awesome. I've met some of my closest friends in the coaching world just by working at Stanford camp, and that part is really cool.
Awesome.
CJ, do you have any questions for us?
Yeah, how are the ideas, like just in the dice of death or whatever, like how are the ideas kind of brought to the table? Is this like a roundtable thing, a group text? Like what is it? Because it's creative and it's fun, and like the whole deal is just awesome.
Yeah, well, we have a group text, and we'll fire off a lot of ideas at each other, and it's pretty apparent when the group feels like it's a not so great idea.
Yeah, very apparent.
But then I think it works both ways though. When we all like an idea, it's also really like apparent. And then, there's the occasional thing where we have to kind of work through. It's kind of a raw idea and we have to refine it. And we also want to make sure we're not doing anything too out of hand. You know what I mean? Because we all have jobs and we like keeping them. So, but yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I think Brad and Kraut, speaking for them, like they've been really creative and helpful and just drawing up a ton of ideas for the show. And I think so far we've been really happy with what we've been able to do, and we are getting better every week, I think. I don't know if they feel that way too, but I just feel like every week we're figuring one more thing out and just kind of iterating on what we're already doing. But the dice of death concept has been really fun, besides like doing the punishments. Although Brad wouldn't know much about that since he hasn't really taken any steps to do any punishments.
Yep.
Kraut much more has fully gone through a punishment, and I'm supposed to take the SAT on Saturday. So there's that. Little wink, wink, no announcement has been made yet. So let's keep it moving. But yeah, any other questions, CJ?
I mean, just, I guess, where do you guys, see this taking you, and how does this kind of like interview or anything help with, what you guys do, and even for yourself in coaching positions or whatever, but where does this take you, or how does this, help you guys out?
Well, I'll jump in and answer that. I think when we kind of started doing this, we felt like what could go wrong, first of all, with trying to meet a bunch of coaches and networking to a bunch of people that Ryan and I personally have never met, right? Because we love coaching and we think that we would love to have a career in it. And, it's kind of all about who you know sometimes. So we figured like, hey, let's start something where we can get interaction with coaches that we want to meet, learn more about the baseball world, and also kind of educate people on what they may not know. And then a third thing would be maybe kind of, put a light on the D3 world that we grew up in, or that we went through college in, because it's kind of like this hidden little gem of baseball in our minds. And obviously after talking with you, we learned like, oh, this is what goes on at Stanford, so it's all these different things. And we just think, we've always said the last few years that we think people would kind of enjoy just listening to us talk and banter back and forth with each other. So let's see if they actually do enjoy it. And so far, some people really like it. So we think that with those two things combined, we didn't really see anything bad coming from it. Just a lot of fun and good experiences, meeting good people, learning about baseball, which we all love. So, I mean, that was for me. That's kind of what kind of came from it.
I mean, yeah, Brad pretty much summed it up. I just think it's a good representation of kind of what the baseball world is like. Like we can kind of get super into the weeds about, hitting, and like we love to have these kind of deep dives about certain, philosophies or ideologies about, the game of baseball. But at the same time, like baseball players are, they're jabronis, like a lot of them are just kind of funny dudes that like we want to get both sides of everybody. And no better way to kind of like get, a sense of somebody's personality. And for me personally, it's been awesome to meet coaches and kind of like obviously like get to know them as people as well. I know personally, like if I could watch a coach on a podcast where they kind of just, very loosely are having fun, having conversation, like that would be huge for me in kind of determining what kind of school I wanted to go to if I wanted to play for that individual. It's hard to get a kind of an idea of what that guy's like. You're always told go watch him coach, but everybody's going to be on their best behavior, come game day. So
Exactly.
I think it's a cool opportunity. It really is.
Yeah, I would say that the networking piece is less important for me. I really enjoy like the talking shop aspect, but like I'm a big podcast consumer, but what I've noticed from baseball podcasts is like it's very like quote unquote professional and straight lace, and like some guys are afraid to kind of speak their mind or kind of let loose, and it's just not really my style, as you may know. So I just enjoy kind of like being more off the cuff and having more fun and being more real. Because like I think like that is much more palatable and much more like realistic to what's going, because I mean any of us can get on like a podcast and give some like arbitrary coach speak and just kind of dodge questions and not really get too into it. But I mean I think it's rare that you find somebody on a podcast interview that is like really, really passionate about what they're talking about and just letting loose and letting it flow and not being guarded. And that's what I think, I hope that we can continue to do. And I mean, I felt like this was solid. And then like we interviewed CJ Perry and B Val so far, and they're both close friends of mine as well. But like we just see like different versions of them than I think we would have seen if it wasn't like in the setting of what we're trying to do here. So I guess that's kind of like the aim or my goal with this, or our goal, hopefully for them too.
Yeah, and I mean, to be honest, that was one of the reasons I was really excited about getting to talk with you guys, because listening to it, I'm laughing my ass off, and it's awesome. I've plugged it to everybody on staff just because it's different, and it's not knocking what anybody else does production wise, but the ability to be the person that you know me as, that we've hung out in hotel rooms and talked shop, and it's been trash talking, and it's been fun and all that stuff. That's the thing that I think was just most appealing and exciting to me, and it's the reason I'll keep getting as much content from you guys as I can, because it's fun and it's different. And yeah, this is awesome. You guys are doing awesome. Yeah,
we appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, man. Well, CJ, thanks for coming on the pod, man. We look forward to maybe having you back sometime down the line, but appreciate all the plugs and such. And good luck this year. Hope you guys can make it back to Omaha.
Thank you. Best of luck to everybody. Appreciate you guys.
Thanks CJ. Man.